Welcome, everybody, to Astrology Unplugged. I'm Rick DiClemente. Very glad that you're joining me tonight, either live or with us on recording on YouTube. If you need to access these, you can go to Rick DiClemente and type in Unplugged. You can just go to Google, type in Astrology Unplugged. It will link you to one of 109 different episodes. Tonight's discussion will be on astrology, and I want to talk to you about how transits work, how you interpret them. We've already gotten started in the last 5 minutes, and it's a perfect discussion because what needs to happen, and this took me 40 years, and I've been working at this for 40 years because I got this theory with me in 1978. It's hard to imagine that these planets are out there. They're not out there. These planets are in here. We're going to talk about what transits do to you and how to interpret them. And then you'll start to understand. And this started out by Karen saying to me, you told me things are going to be bad April, May, and June. Well, I did not say things are going to be bad April, May, and June. I said things are going to be very bad for the president and his chart. I didn't say things would be bad for the world. But anyhow, I'm trying to clarify it. All right. I don't want things to be bad for anybody, but that's just the way it works. Let me give you an example. I told you Mr. Trump has Venus and Saturn in Cancer. And during the last 3 years, Uranus has been square to that. It's been square to that. Well, Uranus coming out of Aries, you have to look at what sign it's in. Uranus is going to be in all signs for 7 years. Uranus is very regular, 7 years, 7 years, 7 years. That's why you have to do this awful thing called homework. You have to understand the basis of these planets. When I ask you what does Neptune want, you got to know. You don't have to be expert on it, but you have to have a basic understanding what these planets are doing. But while Uranus was hitting his Saturn-Venus, you cannot analyze what Uranus is going to do to his Saturn-Venus until you understand what his Saturn-Venus is. Now, a lot of people, it's unbelievable how many people I see with Saturn next to Venus, Saturn opposite Venus, Saturn square to Venus. Over half the people I see have that. Now, that's not even bringing into account that they're in the sign of Cancer. So we're going to go very slowly because it's a perfect example. When your Saturn is next to Venus in Cancer, you have a strong tendency to do this. I'm going to recoil before you hurt me. I'm going to protect myself. You know, Cancer gets a lot of bad rap, but Cancer is the one sign that knows how to protect itself. Cancer is about taking care of me because some sign has to do it. You have to do it. Well, when your nature's the crab and you're ready to crawl under the rock, anytime there's any noise, you're going to crawl under the rock. Now you put Saturn next to Venus. Now you get somebody under the rock that don't want to come out. It's just ultra paranoid. It's ultra non-trusting. It can be beaten. You can get past it. But it's very delicate and it's very tough and it's very indicative. And I do not know. Maybe Suzanne can help me. I don't know about Mr. Trump's early life, but it's an indication that he did not get the mother love, or he thought he didn't get the mother love, or even past lifetimes, way before her. I don't know, and I don't care. But it's an indication in his chart that he's going to stay closed because he's protecting himself because he's so insecure. Well, when Uranus hit that point, it wasn't the world saying, well, your time is up and you'd better get with it and open back up. That's secondary. What it meant was his Uranus was hitting his Saturn and Venus during those years, and he had the opportunity to start opening up because Uranus doesn't want a closed system. Uranus is Aquarians, and Aquarians are open. Aquarians are open and fun and loving and friendly. And everybody's invited to the party. And Saturn and Venus in Cancer, they're back in the corner with maybe one friend or maybe a poodle. So forget about the world. Forget about the Trump Towers. Forget about the presidency. If it were just Mr. Trump during those years, he was getting some voice saying, you know, this Saturn, Venus in me ain't working. Which means you can't just stay closed and be victorious. You just can't breathe. Now, to the degree that he could hear that voice is equal to the hope that he would be able to transcend it. But when you're usually in the middle of the fire of all the media of the whole world, what do? You whine about it. Everybody's out to get me. It's a hoax. It's not fair. It's not fair. They're trying to get me. They're trying to get me. They're going to attack me. They're going to attack me. They're going to attack me. That's how it feels to him. Because he's externalized it. I'm not judging him. I'm not saying I would do any better. I mean, it's a very tough thing. But it's symbolic. And I'm here to tell you that Mr. Trump is doing this for all of us. He may not be aware of it, but he's going through this massive group karmic transit as a representative of the ugly American itself. And there's a lot of ugly American in a lot of us. Okay? Where you've got a Statue of Liberty that's as schizophrenic as they come. Bring me your poor, you're tired, you're hungry, but keep the diseased ones with the blankets out. If they're in a rubber boat, keep them out. But bring them in. Now keep them out. Bring them in. Keep them out. So he has caused us to see how schizophrenic we are, what hypocrites we are. Meanwhile, there are an awful lot of wonderful, wonderful Americans that want to bring in refugees and want to help people come in and start over and all that. But what does he play? He plays the fear card. And the fear card is Saturn. But they're going to get you. And they got bad people in line. And you got to spend $50 million and send soldiers to the border because that little kid might have a bomb in his milk bar. They work on the fear. That's Saturn. Saturn says, oh no, don't you listen to Uranus. Don't open up. You stay closed. As a matter of fact, you better get even close, more close. We all know when you get real close, you blow up, you starve, you suffocate. So, what's happening now? What did Uranus do? Uranus does two things. Either you crack open and you become new out of the eggshell and you got a new fresh breath and you're renewed, even if it's messy and you got egg all over you, or you split. And when you split, you become able to say smaller and smaller sentences. You start to lose it. You start to lose interconnectivity. You start to lose your connection to life because you've been unable in a healthy way to open back up. Some people get so closed for so long, so many lifetimes, that they're only able to open up a little and they can't do it all, and it's too much. And what's best for them, perhaps, can be for them to leave this lifetime. Move on to another one. And Stephen just disappeared from here, and he's our expert on regressive hypnosis. Maybe he can tell us more about it. But you see, Karen, given what I just said to you, given he's in this state of splintering, now, part two. Rick, tell us what's going to happen with the president. Rick, tell us what Trump's going to do. Hey, Rick, when are we going to bring Trump down? Hey, Rick, when's it? Blah, 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 blah. What do I tell all of them? I cannot tell you what a sailboat's going to do when the sail is in 4 million pieces. I can't tell you. The wind's blowing, but the sail is split. That's why you get these off-the-wall comments all day. He's there, but he's here, but he's there, but he's up, but he's down on the golf course. I mean, it's just crazy. Crazy land. Now you bring in Pluto. What do you think Pluto is going to do? Now, Pluto is going to go over the same point from Capricorn. Now his Venus and Saturn in Cancer are going to have Pluto coming across April 24th. Pluto is going to hit the Saturn, and it's going to go back and forth, and eventually it's going to hit the Venus. But in general, Pluto is going to hit that spot for the next 2 years. Now, given the fact that the sailboat has cracks in it, and the sail has a million pieces, and you've got a history of just shattering and shattering and shattering, what do you think Pluto is going to do? And again, this is not out there. It's his Pluto. Now, it would take such a monumental 180-degree change for him to get it and to come forth and say, I apologize. I misused my power. That's the number one thing about Pluto. Pluto wants to know, have you used your power for good or have you abused it? And you cannot BS Pluto. You can't do it. That's why these Scorpios look right through you, because they are. But what the Pluto and him now, which is getting cranked up, you see, as these planets come, your tendency is, oh shit, press it. Oh shit, press it down. Oh shit, press it down. Okay? That's human nature. But if you know astrology, you would go to for instance, you would go to a clinic and you would say, put me in a rubber room. I need help. I need to blow it out. I need to cry for about 3 weeks and blow it out and go back and talk about my upbringing and get all this old stuff out. And you see my point? That's the Pluto inside that wants to come out. That's what gave us Primal Scream. That's what gave us all these people wanting to do ayahuasca. And it's all these people doing the breath work. People are tired of dealing with their blockages. They just want to blow right through it. Well, see, when you're an astrologer for a while, you'll learn the difference between a Uranian time and a Plutonian time. A Uranian time, the pressure is getting greater and greater and greater, and something's got to give. With Pluto, it's, I got to kill something. Perfect example. When you follow the lifetime of Picasso, who was a tremendous Scorpio, he had studios which were so big that when he was in his yellow period, he had a whole studio, it was all yellow. And that's where he did his yellow period. And when he went to his blue period, I'm exaggerating now, but this is the same principle. When he went to his blue period, he didn't just gently shut the door and go across the hall with his brushes and go into the blue period. He went back and destroyed everything that was yellow. He had to. Not as a Uranian, but as a Scorpio. He had to, because the yellow represents weakness. To us going through changes, we look back where we were. We don't necessarily see where we were as a weakness. We might see it as a necessary step. He didn't. He burnt stuff, took it out and smashed it. But this is how Scorpios work. They're very passionate, and this is why they're known as death and rebirth. And this is why you've got this clown in the White House who keeps juggling different personalities and BSing everybody with all these lies and words, right? More importantly, you have all the people that are following him. And Pluto's just going to smash it and reveal it. Now, at the same time, what do you have happening since he rules the country and the world? You got people leaving us. You got people going into the Paris Accord that want to save the planet. He's the single one left that wants to up the usage of coal and fuel and petroleum byproducts. The soul voice. People are starting to leave us, which you were told about years ago. Now, it's not a matter what he does, because he's really beyond, in my opinion, he's beyond help. It's what do we do? What do we do as a collective? And we see very good signs, and we see also very bad signs. So it's still on a seesaw. But the whole point is, let me give you a normal person. Okay, let's take, for example, I've got Jupiter opposite Saturn in my chart. Okay, Jupiter is that part of you wants to expand. I don't care what the rules are. I'm kind of freelance about this. I don't care where we go. Let's just go. Get some money out. Let's spend it. Saturn is, oh, well, I'm not sure. We'll make sure we have the money for next week, and I got to have 3 lunches for the baby, and where we're going to go. So when you have the opposition, like Marcia and I do, you have a constant battle between the two. It's not real bad because one's at 6 and one's at 14, so that's 8 degrees. So it's not a real strong one. But in essence, the part of you that wants to expand and spend the money is in opposition to the part that wants to save money. And every time you spend money, the other part objects to it. And every time you don't spend money, the other part objects to it. It's a natural battle that goes on all the time, beyond what humans naturally do. Now, the key to understanding a transit is to understand what it's hitting. Because what it's hitting is in here, and the thing that's doing the hitting is in here too. Only it manifests through the outside world. You call it into form. I wonder what happened to Stephen. I bet you I know what happened. A real nice dinner. It's probably dinner time. You think so, Elkin? He'll be back. There he is. He's playing with his lips. I was saying you're probably having to do dinner time. Is that right?
In a classic Scorpio fashion, I was incognito for a few minutes.
This is Stephen Poplin, a wonderful guest of art periodically, who's just a wonderful, wonderful hypnotist and past life regressionist, and he's been on with us several times, and he will be on in the future too. And you can look at him under Astrology Unplugged, Stephen Poplin, and you will find the episodes where he has been our guest. And he's a very good astrologer.
And it was a very nice honor being on your show, and thank you for all the support, Rick.
Well, you are certainly welcome here anytime. Now, okay, so now I got this Jupiter-Saturn, okay? Now, transiting Uranus comes along. And Uranus, let's look at it this way. Transiting Jupiter comes along. And I don't care whether it squares it, or hits the other end, or hits another square, or hits the Jupiter. If Jupiter gets involved by transit, the Jupiter part of you is going to say, yeah, I've been trying to tell you all this time. Quit being so uptight. Let that belt loose a little bit. Spend some money. Hey, give me the dice. Let's go. Because the transiting planet is the current energy. It's the current energy. So when the Jupiter hits the Saturn, or the Jupiter hits the Jupiter return, the Jupiter voice in you gets louder. You feel more assured. That's what Jupiter does. Now, if transiting Saturn comes along and hits any one of those 4 spots, I work a lot in north, east, west, south. I work a lot with oppositions, conjunctions, and squares. The other aspects are very real too. But if you can't operate with these basic Ptolemaic aspects, named after Ptolemy, squares, sextiles, trines, oppositions, conjunctions, the 5 major aspects. If you cannot work with them, then good luck working with the noviles and the biseptiles and all that stuff. Okay, so now you got Jupiter, Saturn. Let's say Saturn comes along. Saturn says, well, I've been trying to tell you all these years you won't listen to me. Always out there blowing up money. How bad are those credit cards? Huh? How bad these credit cards get? Yeah, you won't listen. You just keep flapping it down, paying for tomorrow, right? And you feel like, I feel like I need to start being more conservative. Saturn hit my Mercury a while back. I feel like I've got to start curbing how I talk. Saturn hit my Mercury. How you talk, how you speak, how you think. Saturn hit it, and one day I felt like, boy, I can see very clearly where I would benefit by curbing how I speak, being a little calmer and more controlled. And then the people will say to me, and this is the end all be all, the caveat is the clients say, boy, ain't that funny. And when they say, boy, ain't that funny, is when you know you're on track because you're describing the archetype that they're under. Boy, I felt this thing come over me. I'm not sure what this was, but it came over me. And you're describing it, and they're flipped out that you can even claim it or declare it, because how would you know? Because to them, everything's in here. To human ego, everything's in here because we're totally separate from everything, and everything's in here. And then it's saying, right. It's proven to be wrong. Another example. Okay. Let's see, the Saturn part of you is you. The Jupiter part of you is you. All these parts are you. And when you get a good astrologer to read your natal chart, you will find out clearly where your weak spots are, where you need to rebalance. Okay? Let's go back to the Jupiter-Saturn. They're constantly in opposition. And throughout life, you let one speak, then you let one speak, and then you shut them both up. And they're always talking. They're always talking. Every decision you make, you're trying to keep them happy. You can see the Libra scales going up and down. Let's say Uranus gets involved. Say Uranus gets up in the middle. Uranus comes along and squares the Jupiter-Saturn opposition. Well, what side do you think Uranus is going to favor? It's going to favor the Jupiter. It's going to double team you. Jupiter and Uranus are going to jump on you together and tell that Saturn, yeah, why don't you listen? You're always uptight. We can't ever have a vacation. We can't go do anything. We can't do anything new. We're always playing Yahtzee on Saturday night. Or dominoes, right? And Jupiter goes, yeah, you don't listen to that? And so the problem with Uranus, and thank God Saturn's involved, because if you just leave it to Jupiter and Uranus, you got yourself Thelma and Louise going over the cliff. It's just too wild. One says, let's go, and everyone says, yeah. That's what Jupiter and Uranus says. And Saturn's like, ah! You see? So sometimes the transit that's coming by needs modification from some other energy. It's very complex, and that's why you don't see very many good astrologers, because it's just that complex. And same with chess players. It's just that damn complex. Okay, another example. You're sitting here, let's take a nice little example. You got Venus in Libra, okay? Very nice place for Venus. Very pleasant. You like your friends. You like to go out. You like to have pleasant dinner. You like to have pleasant conversations. When a planet comes by and just hits that Venus, the Venus starts to say, let me start entertaining that. If it's Pluto, the Venus wants to get deeper and more passionate. If it's Neptune, the Venus wants to get more to itself, get quieter, more passive. Okay? If it's Uranus, the person wants to get a little bit wilder, a little bit crazier, not so much worried about being tactful and all that. So you have to look at all the things involved. If it's a Libra's chart, you give it more weight than other people because Venus is the ruler of Libra. Now, other example. If the Venus is in Libra, and it's right next to Neptune, a lot of people born in the 1950s, when Neptune was in Libra, a lot of people had Venus next to Neptune. Okay, they got Venus and Neptune in Libra. I'm not showing charts because I don't want you getting lost in the rest of the chart. That's why I'm doing this. Venus and Neptune. I'm going to take a small pause here. We're going to come back to this. Well, for about 80 years, us astrologers had the great benefit of the work that was done by, I got that right in front of me. The work that was done by Eberton. It's really hot in here. Okay. Reinhold Eberton, the German, 80 years ago, wrote this marvelous must-have research book called The Combination of Stellar Influences. And in this book, he combined every planet, not only every 2 planets, but every 3 planets. And it's 80 years old, and it's lost a little bit in translation, but in that book, you can see what Venus and Mars means, what Venus and Saturn means, what Venus and Uranus means, what Venus and Pluto means, and what's the positive, what's the negative. What if they're in your birth chart? What if they're transiting? What if the 2 are in the birth chart? What if one's going through a transit hitting the other one? And then he brings on a 3rd planet, which means, what if you have Venus and Neptune and a 3rd planet gets involved in the middle? And he did all this marvelous, incredibly toilsome work researching what these combinations mean. And a lot of it's just not right. It's just, you could tell he needed much more work, but it was such an arduous task. And it's a great book to have on hand because he gives you a place to start. What if I look at comparison, I'm comparing my chart with Marcia. Okay, and Marcia's got a Mars right between where my Venus and Neptune are. You see? So I would go to Eberton's book and read Mars is equal to Venus Neptune. That's how you put it. The 3rd planet, Mars, is equal to Venus Neptune. And he would not only tell me what the Venus Neptune means, positive and negative, but he would tell me what the 3rd planet does. And the Mars energizes that midpoint of Venus Neptune. So it's a very good book to get started. Today's copy looks different. It's this one here. This is the new cover. If you don't have it, get it. Because even though it's old, it's marvelous. It'll give you so much, stir your thoughts so well. And today's answer to that is Arroyo's book called the Handbook of
Astrologer's Handbook?
No. I forget the name. Anybody got it? Anybody got it? Astrologer's Handbook by Arroyo. Anybody know it? Anyhow, in that book, he does all 2. He combines all 2 planets together. It's a very sane book. He doesn't go to a 3rd planet. He just combines Venus and Pluto, the Sun and Mercury. He combines the 2 in a very realistic way per all the thousands of people he's read for. An Astrologer's Handbook. It's a must. It's one of the main books you've got to have if you're going to translate. Okay, so we're going back to Venus Neptune. Now, remember we started out with this wonderful Venus in Libra, which is exalted there, which means it's the best. No, it's not exalted there. It's the ruler of. Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces. But Venus is wonderfully placed in the sign of Libra. It's very placid, very accommodating, very pleasant, beautiful smile, very charming. Now, when you put Neptune next to it, now remember, orb is everything. How close is it? Is it the same degree? Is it 1 degree? Is it 3 degrees? 5 degrees? Once they get to about 9 degrees, they start to lose their impact. But in my opinion, generally, you don't want any planets too close. You just want some breathing room. But what happens with the Venus-Neptune? Well, the Venus says, I'm going to be very pleasant, have some friends over tonight, and I'm not going to invite them. They're kind of loud. Bring these people, they're kind of smooth. And Neptune says, yeah, let's have the smooth people. And let's talk about all this spiritual stuff, and it's all kind of dreamy, you know. What you have with a Venus-Neptune person, and I'm talking about Aries people I've seen, Leo people I've seen, people with very harsh charts. They got Venus-Neptune. They're very romantic. They're very romantic. Oh, they want to go see these movies, and they want to be treated like this. They want to be treated softly, and they want to take flowers to their dates. And Elke's up there hiding her eyes. I don't know what that means. Okay, now the point is your Venus has just become a whole lot softer. And there's nothing wrong with that. But your Venus better be ready. Why? Because Venus and Libra are not signs that are interested in beyond. Venus is a very social sign. And every Libra you meet, almost every Libra is not interested in the other side or the other dimensions unless they have a major Neptune. And I see many Libras who do, and they're a blend of both worlds. They're very down to earth, and they're also very spiritual. And a lot of them have both, and they can make it work. Okay, so now you've got this person that's Venus Neptune, and you know their needle leans towards the soft instead of towards the harsh, like a Venus in Aries, a Venus in Aquarius, a Venus in Aries, Leo, Sag. Now, along comes a Mars transit. Well, the Mars transit that hits that, what do you think is going to happen? They come home and say, well, I was talking to so-and-so, and they hurt my feelings, and they jumped all over me, and they was rude to them. And they probably did. They probably had some friend jump all over them rudely and treat them unfairly, or somebody said something very unpleasant and really hurt them. Very probable. And then it passes by because Mars is usually 2-3 days. Well, you're not going to get much of a reaction out of Venus or Neptune in terms of defending itself. They're not harsh planets. They're very feminine, going inward types of planets. But if the person's Venus-Neptune is born square to Uranus, the Venus-Neptune is born square to Uranus, and Mars hits it, it won't be that big of a deal for this person. They'll fight right back. Punch me, I'll punch you back. Because the Venus-Neptune is always used to dealing with harsh, sharp energies from Uranus. You see how it all combines? That's why the title of that book is The Combination of Stellar Influences, which is kind of hypocritical because the stars don't really do anything to you, nor do the planets. That's another day. And if you want to get down to it, nothing causes anything. Now, that's a whole nother story. And I'm working on getting our next guest, who's an expert with quantum mechanics. I'm still working to get him lined up. I'll give you another example. You have to keep many things in mind when you're reading a chart. For example, let's say you've got Mercury. I don't care where your Mercury is. For instance, the other night, I was reading for somebody, and she was a very advanced, very forward-looking woman. She was very up to the moment, very inventive, very much leave the past behind. But she had Mercury and Capricorn in the 9th house. She had a very traditional Mercury in Capricorn. in the ninth house of philosophy and history. So I was able to put together, because her Mercury was being energized. I knew that she was getting energized mentally, but it was still energizing a Mercury in Capricorn in the ninth house. So I kept saying to her, you're going to go forward with all these new ways of doing things, but you're going to keep reminding people that you stand on the shoulders of the old timers who got you here. Because Capricorn's always about honoring the past, honoring these hard roads that got us here. So you have to blend all these energies together as you're talking. But when I watch so many TV shows and I see situations, I'm always looking for where I could help, where I couldn't help. And where I can help is where you see somebody's going through something, they don't understand what they're going through. And I'm always going, get an astrologer, ad nauseum. And it's the truth. Okay, another example. Let's say you have a moon, and your moon is very stable in the sign of Taurus. I don't care what your chart's like. The moon is rock solid, exalted in the sign of Taurus. Why? Because the moon needs that receptacle, the earth, the mud puddle, that curve in the earth that contains the moon. And the earth needs the water because the earth will dry up. So in astrology, water and earth are partners, and air and fire are partners. That's very basic, a basic truth to astrology. Okay, well, when your moon is in Taurus, you're very stable, and I don't care what you are, what your sun sign is, you're going to lean towards, I want to stay home tonight. I want the same old cats. I want the same old house. Do we have to paint the house yet? It's been fine for the last 45 years. Why should we paint it? Karen's getting a kick out of it because she lived with a Taurus for a while. Karen wants to update things, and Elliot, who was her former, he was the Taurus, saying, well, can't we just live with the same one? Okay.
Well, I'm living with trying to disperse of, I mean, people look and they say, how long have you been doing this? I said, a year and a half. Well, what's taken so long? And one of the men that's helped me, he said, do you know how many boxes of paper I've burned? I mean, there were 42 boxes of stuff to go through, and that didn't include the tools and all the other stuff he had.
Yeah, but see, to a Taurus, that's their security.
I know that.
But it's also a weight around your neck.
When I pulled papers and deeds up to the house that his deceased father owned with his deceased mother, 40 years ago, it's like...
Yeah, it's humorous. Okay, now for example, the moon in Taurus person is very stable. Now, when a Saturn transit goes by that person, it usually doesn't bother them too much because they're very stable. They're all about anchoring, and all of a sudden they want to anchor some more. They're going to get some facets from Saturn, such as getting more wrinkles, more stiffness in your joints, etc., and more responsibility at work, etc. But for example, what happens when Uranus goes by? And Uranus is all about, hey, forget all this stuff. I know that's how you had it, but let's change everything. Hey, what do you say? Woo! Let's rearrange your furniture. Well, the Taurus is in there going, they're shocked. They're in shock. They can't stand the uprooting and the excitement. Now, if the Taurus person is in sync with themselves, the Uranus will be felt from within. And the more you feel it from within, the less you will see it coming from the outside. The Taurus person will turn to Karen and say, well, you know what? I've just held on to this junk too long. Let's just go burn it. And this wall here has been yellow for 40 years. Let's paint that thing green, right? And that person's allowing that fresh new Uranus energy to come through. Uranus is not trying to disrupt just to disrupt. The bad side of Uranus is Uranus is there to disrupt, to open up space so you can breathe. I mean, how does that hobbit hold smell after 40 years when he's got the door closed and he's got the pipe going and he's got the fireplace going and got a little tiny window? After a while, you need to open the windows, get some air in there. So to the degree that that person with the moon in Taurus is flexible to allow the Uranus to come through is directly proportional to how little the outside world will bug him. I told you this story. I'm going to repeat it anyway. It wasn't more than a month ago. The Taurus lady has these kids. I'm reading for years. One day she comes to me after many readings. She said, these kids are driving me nuts. I said, well, all of a sudden they're driving you nuts. They've been around all this time, but all of a sudden they're driving you nuts. She said, yeah, every one of them. And I looked at her chart and Uranus was hitting something. Okay? Which means the Uranus inside was coming out. The part that wanted to change, try something new hairdo, new hair color, new eyeglasses, try something new. She was shoving it down because we cannot believe that these energies are independent from us. In a way they are. In a way they are because you cannot, they're independent because we're out of touch. They seem independent. But your attentiveness to the collective, your attentiveness to your karmic ties to the collective will pick up and feel this Uranian energy and say, I want to change these things. Well, she was feeling nothing. All this change was coming through. It was being experienced as chaos. Then it came from the outside. All the kids are acting crazy. And I know it's the same kids. So it's not the kids, it's her. What am I going to do, Rick? What am I going to do? And I told you what I told her. I said, go outside with the kids the next 2 days. Take the hose. It was summertime. Make a bunch of mud and go roll in the mud and throw mud at each other and put it in each other's face and down their backs and everything. And you come up and do it again. Just be crazy. Not because of any reason other than you eventually got to crack. You got to crack the shell so you get some air. Then see where you go from there. And the more repressed you are, the more explosive the Uranus transit is. Directly. She called me back in a couple of weeks, I think it was. She said, oh, it's the greatest thing you ever told me. We had more fun than you would believe. I said, I believe it. You let yourself breathe. I said, when it was all over, the kids were just like they always were. It was you that was changing. She said, oh, you're right. And I've been just so dogged down and same old. I tried some new things. Joined a bowling league with my friends. And, she's opening up and trying stuff. So we get so bogged down at thinking the stuff is coming from the outside world. %90 of the time, when I have a client and I say, when you were around your mother between the ages of 5 and 15, I always start with this. Between the ages of 5 and 15, how did you feel? The person will not answer me. The person will tell me what their mother was like. They will just explain why their mother was that way. They will explain what they were like, why things were that way. And I'll repeat the question. How did you feel when you were around her? Oh, how did I feel? And then you have to think about it. I didn't feel good. Okay, let's try this again. How did you feel? I felt nervous. All right, now we're getting somewhere. Why did you feel nervous? Well, because she was always jumpy and she would never settle down. Now we got to the point. I don't want to talk about their mother anymore. Now I know that she had to grow up with that kind of energy. You see? We're so unkind to ourselves. I'm sure Stephen would back me up on this one after doing so much hypnosis with people. We think that we're bad, and we think the outside, what it is, we're all deathly afraid that the outside world will find out what phonies we are, and they're going to report us to the big man. And it just isn't true. Okay, now, I told you a long time ago, you probably forget this one. I'm on the radio, it's 1982, and I got a lady on the line, and she's a Libra, and she gives me her birth time. I got an astrology show, and I got my assistant who turns all the knobs. I got him trained in astrology, and I got 1 minute to come back and start reading. 1 minute. Well, you can only do so much in 1 minute, and I came back, and I told my assistant when we were off the air, I said, she's going through everything, booming, banging. She got hit by every 6 planets at once. I said, well, get ready. She comes back. She had a typical, very pleasant, lovely Libra voice. I said, how are you? She says, I'm doing just fine. I went, really? And she was doing just fine. And I learned my lesson there. There was a woman who has stayed in balance all along. So when she did get hit by 6 planets, it was no big deal. She was, when the blue planet came by, she became blue. When the green one came by, she became green. She was inner healthy. She flexed. And that's why she did go through great strain. And she taught me a lesson that stuck with me all these years. Most of us are not that healthy. Most of us are not that flexible inwardly, where an energized planet hits us and we get energized, and where a stable planet comes by and stabilizes. Most of us are a little out of whack somewhere, and something knocks us over. So the thing to remember is, study the birth chart before you try to become magnificent at looking at how they're going to do during transits. Study the birth chart. If the birth chart is, my God, any little gust of wind's going to knock this person crazy because the energy in the chart's just so unstable, you got to have that in your mind before you start looking at transits. However, with the charts got 6 planets in Taurus, and a hurricane comes by and they don't even notice it, you got the opposite problem. So you got to get to know what you're looking at. Most people's charts are not that dramatically different, but what most people's charts do have, there's Linda sitting there looking at us. Well, that's nice to have you with us. Great. But what most people's charts have is weak spots. That's sensitive points. That's why I've been on you for so long now, to look at what transits did to you when they hit your tender spots. Guaranteed. Big deal stuff happened to you. Got fired, got married, had sex, had an operation, had a car wreck. The sensitive points in your chart are there for a specific reason, and usually they're at the tip of a T-square. They're next to your sun or your moon. They're right on the ascendant, right at the midheaven. And when planets come and hit that, that's why I was telling you about Mr. Trump and his Saturn and Venus around 24 degrees of Cancer. And Pluto's at 20. And it's going to be at 21. And then in April 24th, it's going to be at 24 degrees, right opposite of Saturn. It's going to be opposite of Saturn because it's exactly the right time for it to be there. And he is either going to turn a new leaf and find his power, summon his power, that's Pluto. Or he's going to be exiled in some way and rubbed out. I'm not talking about assassination. Death can happen from just inside. And I'm not talking about his body either. You've seen a lot of people die and their body keeps working. You can just take so much. But all the indicators are that every time his Venus-Saturn got hit, he's just not done well. And Suzanne, who's with us, has been channeling Mrs. Trump. She would know much more than I do what the Venus-Saturn means. It can mean so many things. It can mean that the parents weren't available. It can mean oftentimes daddy was on the road, a big businessman, never got to see him. If it's retrograde, it gets worse. It can mean one of them was an alcoholic. It can mean that they told you were never wanted. It can also mean what's very common with Venus-Saturn is mommy was unhappy, so I was unhappy. A lot of kids mirror the parent because that's their way of loving them. Because to a child, you got to have acceptance from the parents. And kids will do something stupid to stay connected. But maybe we could tune in with Suzanne if you're feeling all right. And you have anything to say about? I got you unmuted. What would you have to say about Mr. Trump's Venus, Saturn, in Cancer?
Well, I haven't studied it astrology-wise, but talking to Mary, I mean, she's really helped me a lot. But I really see him a lot differently now, having those channelings happen. He's never matured. He did not get past. He got frozen there. She almost died when he was 2.
Really?
And Trump took over the household for about a year.
What was that?
Mary almost died when Trump was 2 years old.
From what?
She had a hysterectomy and later had severe abdominal infections. And Fred came home and told his kids, and he was talking to his family, well, she's not going to make it. So she told me that she was out of commission, that at one point she was this bright, cheerful housewife, loved everything. And it took a while to get back and to get back to her normal self. And Trump, as a 2-year-old, sensed that as a betrayal.
Yes. And oftentimes it can even be that you had another child and the new baby gets the attention. And then the next one starts to feel unloved because they're getting less attention. It can be so many things, but the nature of Venus-Saturn is you feel unloved, you feel unworthy of love, and this is going to surprise you, but it's so evident that I'm just going to say it. I see so many people that have relationships with a Venus-Saturn and a Venus-Saturn and a Venus-Saturn and a Venus-Saturn. It's unbelievable. I have 4 in a row where the partner has that. And it's very clear to me what's happening, because they'll say to me, why do I keep drawing this kind of person to myself? And to me, it's a message, bless you. To me, it is a message that the Venus-Saturn person is unable to open up, and that gives you a reason to stay close to. That's what I found. Stephen, let me ask you, and I can feel it coming out of you. Go ahead.
You psychically felt my energy.
I saw the hands starting to come up.
Very good.
What do you get with this?
Yes. That was pretty interesting about the early experiences of Trump and his mother and the, I guess, the near-death experiences. But that certainly does remind me of the serious dynamics there with Venus and Saturn in Cancer. Cancer being classically the mother energy, also the early childhood, and Saturn can indeed cause some crises. I don't know exactly what the aspect is. I don't know. I don't think it's a conjunction, is it?
Yes. In his chart, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
then
about
that would
4 degrees separated.
Oh yeah, that's a conjunction. You know, I go up to like 8, but that then would emphasize to me even the hysterectomy aspect or Venus or female problems of a critical nature, Saturn in the sign of mother. One thing that I would want to ask though, and I really don't know about this, was Eve his mother then either thereafter rather cold, or was he sent off to like a nanny or a boarding school?
No,
Good,
not a
good point.
Yeah. She told me that she fundamentally changed. So her personality as a mother had changed, and she didn't get back to her normal self maybe until he was 15 or 12 years old. But even when I channel this, I try to look at what was correct and what I heard correct and all that. And there were childhood friends of Trump that stated in a book that whenever they came over to his house when he was maybe 9, that it was always Fred Trump that let the kids in and was watching the kids outside play. Mary wasn't anywhere to be seen.
Closed.
So I don't know if that was some kind of coldness on her part, but otherwise she's a very vivacious person. She walked in the room and everybody just lit up the room. So I don't know where the disconnect went.
Suzanne, some people, dear, are having trouble hearing you. Can you get closer to your mic?
Yeah.
That's better. Thank you.
Yeah. So, it's verified in biographies about Trump that when he was about 8 or 9, the childhood friends who were interviewed said they never saw Mary when they came over to visit, to play in the backyard or whatever. There was always Fred Trump that was always there interacting with the children. And that might not be a full picture, but there's a disconnect with the mother. And it's just alarming how she came from poverty the way that she did. And then Trump is just dissing the immigrants who are coming in for whatever reason, but
the fascinating thing now is to blow this up to the large national scale. Uranus was all over these two planets the last 3 years, which is all this craziness about the building the wall and immigrants and all that. When Pluto hits that, it's no wonder Pluto's close to it, and you've got 5,000 troops sent to the border. Venus Saturn's about your borders. Now, the difference between Venus Saturn and Moon Saturn, they're kind of similar, but a little different. The Moon Saturn is much more critical to the well-being, but the Venus Saturn is very social. Well, Venus Saturn says to me, are you going to listen to the words on the Statue of Liberty, or are we going to take them off? Are these people welcome or not?
Well, what he can't stand about the immigrants is that they're vulnerable. And she explained to me that he can't handle the fact that he's actually vulnerable.
Yeah, he's very vulnerable. Right. Right.
Puts a front up. So the border is representing like a larger psychology within his inner life and also the nations to keep safe.
Elke, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Everything is reflected in the chart, like everything around him, like everything around us is reflected, is a reflection of our charts, everything.
Yeah.
It's exactly right. So it's making us examine, a healthier attitude would be, why don't we let some people in, put them through a nice program, and keep some people out? But we've gone so long, the Republicans have used these people so long, and the Democrats have used these people so long, and it's got to this boiling point. Our problem is not immigration. We got severe problems beyond immigration, such as the water's getting bad, and we're not going to have any food to eat, and all those types of things. I wanted to ask Stephen, by the way, if you're new to the program, Stephen is in Iowa. Stephen is a world-renowned regressionist. When you take people through past lives, Stephen, and you see a Venus-Saturn type of thing, which is so common, which is fear of opening up. What do you typically find when you dig back to a specific lifetime?
Oftentimes with that would be someone in a past life who had been an orphan or had lost their family, lost their mother, and felt very isolated. And there was a strong emotional desire to have family, to have people close nearby. And then what happens next time or in the present life is that they oftentimes have a very strong cancer placement and this like instinctual desire to have family nearby.
Another thing that Arroyo taught me clearly, and this was invaluable, sometimes Venus, Saturn are the people in the room that are really open because they overdo it. I remember writing in the book about a woman, we had a woman next to us. Liza and I were doing a fair somewhere in Ohio, I think, many years ago. There was a woman next to us while I'm reading for people, and she just would not stop talking. She was just sitting on a chair, and I had to find a nice way to ask her to move somewhere. And in her chart, she had like Sun, Moon, Saturn. You would never think a Sun, Moon, Saturn would be the one that couldn't stop talking, but Arroyo shows you through his wonderful experience and his brilliance. Sometimes people take the quality that they lack and they flip it and become the exact opposite. Sometimes the most talkative person in the room is the most repressed, but it's all an overcompensation. So it's a very interesting way of doing it. What I want to do now is, I think you've got the point. I want to bring this to an end and open it up for questions and discussions. For now, we'll leave the recording going on through to, yes, we'll leave the recording going on through to YouTube, and we thank those people for joining us. So if you have any questions or statements about the subject of translating one energy when it combines with another, then now would be the time. Go ahead, Elke. I thought I saw your hand go up. Okay, who would like to go? Stephen, any got a question?
I was wondering if anybody had done anything with aspects and numerology.
Well, we happen to have two people here in Pittsburgh, elderly people who are absolutely stunning and remarkable with their knowledge of numerology and many other fields. I have not. I've had guests on my show who were very poor that did numerology, and I've also had guests that were excellent. So I think there's really something there. I really do. Mm-hmm. What are you talking about?
When I take the 360 degrees of the zodiac, and then of course you divide it by 1, which is back to 1, back to
harmonics
conjunction. Then the conjunction would be associated with 1, and the number 1. And with an opposition, the zodiac divided into half, 180 degrees, divided into 2. And so 2 would be an opposition.
I think Elke's right. It is sacred geometry, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I would greatly point everybody to a marvelous book by Michael Schneider. Michael Schneider, mathematician. The book is called Constructing the Universe. Constructing the Universe, or the study of the numbers 1 through 10. And it's marvelous. He's a mathematician, and he gives you 3 and then 4, and he shows you where that number comes from and what it means as far as numerology and as far as sacred geometry. It's very much a sacred geometry book. It's just marvelous. It's at least 12 years old now. Michael Schneider, you can find him on YouTube. His book is on everywhere.com, also known as Amazon. And it's really worth the read because he does his research and he can explain things to you really easily. He also points out to you the weird ones, like 7. Why 7's so unusual? Why 5 is unusual? The vibration. And he even goes on into 11 and 12, but he doesn't go much beyond that. But it's right down your alley, Mr. Poplin. I'm going to say goodnight to the YouTubers and thank them for joining us. Any week you want to join us live, you come in Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern. Just go to Astrology Unplugged on Google, and it'll take you to the link. If not, these episodes are re-aired the following day on Fridays on YouTube. So thanks for joining us.